Hi everyone, my name is Carolina and I'm the product manager for DevTunnels.
And I'm Jake, and I'm a software engineer on the DevTunnels team.
And thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be talking about DevTunnels and how you can use it to securely test your web apps and webhooks. And I will kick us off with a really brief overview of what DevTunnels is, and then also share some really exciting announcements. And then Jake's going to be doing some demos. We'll do a GitHub webhooks demo and a web app demo. We're actually going to need all of your help for. And then I will wrap everything up with some takeaways. And throughout the presentation, if you are wondering, where can I get documentation? How do I get started? Or where can I submit feedback or issues? We do have a link tree in this QR code, which just shows you all of those links. So I'll give everyone a moment to scan that, or just go to the ak.ms devtunnels/linktree. Cool. So yeah, if you are wondering what DevTunnels is, it's a really powerful tool to securely connect your local endpoint to a public endpoint. And that's going to help you enhance your productivity when you are testing and debugging the webhooks, APIs, or web apps. And there's a few different scenarios that I want to dive into today where we see our customers using DevTunnels today. So the first is to test an app on your physical phone or tablet. There's, of course, many ways to do that today, but DevTunnels makes it so easy to do that. You have a URL that you can just go to and view and test it on your physical device. You can also use DevTunnels to test an app with external services. So that includes Power Platform connectors, Azure Communication Service APIs, Teams apps, and GitHub webhooks. And this is definitely where DevTunnels shines, because when you're developing webhooks locally, they need to be publicly accessible on the internet. So you have to use something like DevTunnels to do that. You can also use DevTunnels to just simply share your in-progress work with others. So let's say you're working with a client and you want to share with them the current work in progress. You can create a persistent tunnel URL, send that to them over email, and they can view it at their own time. Or if you're participating in a hackathon and you want to showcase your demo, you can put a DevTunnel URL for your local host and show that to others during the hackathon. And DevTunnels is not new. Y'all have been using it for the past few months, fully integrated and built into Visual Studio. And we've just been getting a tremendous amount of wonderful feedback from y'all. And because of that, we are now generally available as of today. And that means that you no longer have to enable it in options. It's just in the debug dropdown. So please give that a try today and continue to give us your feedback. And I think the biggest highlight we hear from the VS experience is that it's built in and it's so easy to get started and to use. But we do hear there's some feedback of we want to be able to use DevTunnels outside of Visual Studio for different scenarios. So with that, we have released a DevTunnel CLI, so you can do exactly that. You can create and build and manage your tunnels in the DevTunnel CLI. And there are 2 links there to take you to that. And they're also in the QR code from earlier if you scan that. And also, we do have a GitHub repo where you can now submit issues or feedback or feature requests. And that's also in that link tree. And as a product manager, I want to hear your feedback as soon as possible. And the quickest way to get to me is through text. So I asked Jake if he can help me out and set up a way that every time a new issue is open on that repo, that I will be notified. So he used GitHub webhooks and DevTunnels to do just that. And he will show it to us.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to be showing a quick demo of how to set up a GitHub webhook using DevTunnels. It's going to be targeting a locally running service. So for this demo, I have a locally running Ruby server that's exposed on port 4567, and we're going to connect that on a webhook for this GitHub repo. So to start, we're going to go over to webhooks and add a webhook. Here we can see that it's asking for a payload URL. Right now, our server is only exposed on a localhost port, which obviously isn't going to work here because GitHub is going to need to call it. So we're going to have to use a DevTunnel CLI to create a payload URL that can be used by GitHub. So I can open up my terminal and first log into the CLI using DevTunnel user login. And I want to log in using my GitHub account, so I'll use the -G flag. That's going to quickly authenticate, and I can go back to the CLI. Now I want to create a persistent tunnel that I can use over multiple sessions to test this webhook. I can do this using DevTunnel create, and that's going to give me the tunnel. Now I just need to add the port that we're going to be using to connect to the local server, which we can do using devtunnel port create, and then pass in the port number, which is 4567. Now we have this port created, but we want to give GitHub access in order to connect. We can do this by adding anonymous access to the tunnel. We can do this using the CLI command devtunnel access create -p4567, and then pass in the -a flag to give anonymous access. Finally, the last step is to start hosting the tunnel. After we host it, we're going to get the URL that we can paste into the payload in GitHub webhooks. And we're listening on the -payload endpoint. And we are using the application.json content type. And we can leave the SSL verification and turn it on for sending everything. We can go ahead and create that webhook and create a new issue in this repo. Go ahead and submit it. We can go back to settings, webhooks, and look at this webhook. And we can see the recent deliveries. We have the initial ping when we set up the webhook, and then we have another one for when the issue is opened. And then Carolina can show everyone that when this issue was created, she got a text message from my locally running server.
Sweet, now I always know when y'all are opening up new issues on our GitHub repo.
So yeah, this is just a quick demo of how you can quickly iterate when you're testing webhooks locally without having to deploy them. And you can get real request payloads from websites such as GitHub. So now we're going to move over to the second demo, which is exposing code that you're running locally to coworkers to test out. So here I just have a simple server that's going to allow everyone to vote for their favorite pet. And I'm going to start it. And once again, we can see that it's going to be hosted locally on port 5080 and 7080, but no one else can access that. So we can close the first tunnel. And now we can create a one-time tunnel that's going to be deleted after the session is finished. We can do this using devtunnel host. We can pass in the port that we want to be hosting, which is 5080. And then since we want everyone to be able to access this, we can pass in the -a flag, which will give anonymous access to the tunnel. We're going to get two URLs. The first URL is the way that we're actually going to access what's being hosted on the tunnel, and then a second URL where we can inspect all the traffic going through the tunnel. So let's open up both of these. The first thing we see when we connect to the tunnel is our anti-phishing page. This is just so everyone knows that they're connecting to an actual dev tunnel, and they're not going to be connecting to a fake website that's going to be phishing for credentials. We can click continue, and once again, we get the website. And I'm going to pop up a QR code. So if you're in the audience, feel free to scan this QR code and start voting on what your favorite pet is. Let me get the QR code back up.
Jake, I am voting for cat, but the counter is not increasing.
OK, let's refresh. Wow, looks like you guys really like capybaras. So far, we have 0 votes for cat, 0 votes for dog, and 33 votes for capybara. Let's go over to the inspection page where we can see the requests going through the tunnel and see what's going on. So as we can see here, we can see that dog and cat is being called a lot. Actually, looks like no one's really voting for capybara. So there must be something wrong in our code. So let's go over and check that out.
Capybara requests are coming in now.
So let's see. It looks like we might have an error here where when everyone votes for cats or when everyone votes for dogs, we're actually just incrementing the capybara. So let's fix that. And then I can restart this. And now we're running the new version on the app. And you can just refresh the page, and you'll see this newer version where, hopefully, now you can vote for your favorite cat, favorite dog, or capybara. And we can see that the results are a little bit more balanced this time, and not everyone's favorite pet is the capybara. So yeah, this is just another quick demo of how dev tunnels can expose your local URLs so that other people can test out your locally running code at a larger scale than would be possible before. So I'm going to pass it back to Carolina for some closing thoughts.
Cool, thanks, Jake. I'm glad the cats and dogs were able to get their votes. So today I just wanted to end it with some takeaways on why you should be using dev tunnels. And one, I want to highlight that it's secure by default. So when you create a dev tunnel, it is only accessible to you. If you want to make it open to the public or to members in your organization, you have to choose that. But from default, it's only accessible to you. So for example, in this latest demo, Jake made it public so all of you guys could vote today on that demo. Next, persistent URLs. DevTunnels supports persistent URLs for scenarios that require you to keep the same URL. Like when you're developing webhooks, you want to have the same URL. Or if when you're developing a VS and you close VS, you want to have that same URL when you reopen it, you would just choose persistent URL instead of temporary. We also support multiple simultaneous ports on the same tunnel at the same time. And then also, we are globally available, so whenever you're creating a dev tunnel, it's going to try to create it in the closest available tunnel. So for example, right now, we are in Seattle, Washington, and when Jake created the tunnel, it was created in West US. And then finally, tunnel inspection to inspect traffic sent across the tunnel, which is just really helpful for when you're debugging, like we just saw in the demo of capybaras getting all the votes, and the cats and dogs did not get their the counting increased. So those are the 5 main takeaways that we want you guys to have for our presentation. And if you missed that QR code in the beginning, that has links to our documentation and that GitHub repo where I will now be notified every time you all submit an issue. You can just scan that to get to our link tree. And if you have any questions or if you just like to chat with us, Nagaraju, our coworker, Jake, and myself will be down the hall in the developer tools room later today and tomorrow as well. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.